What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the first edition of the Horseshoe Show here on Surge Sports TV. I am your host, Jack Rizzo, here, thrilled to be joined by all of you guys tonight. So, most of you guys probably recognize me from the other podcast I do on this channel called the 12th Horseshoe Podcast. And for you Colts fans out there, you probably recognize me as the guy who's always arguing on Twitter that Jeff Saturday is the greatest interim head coach of all time. But other than that, I am here to tell you guys that today is the first edition of a new show that I am starting right here called the Horseshoe Show. It is strictly a show covering the Indianapolis Colts. Of course, the 12th Horseshoe podcast is a league-wide podcast, but as a Colts fan, I've always wanted to cover one of these shows live. I've always wanted to cover my own team, so I'm really excited to be doing that here. Before I start with today's episode, just wanted to do a couple of thank yous. First off, obviously, got to give a big thanks to my mentor and good friend, Bobby. Thank you for everything you have done for me, all that you have taught me. I'm really, really grateful to have somebody like you throughout my broadcasting journey. Next up, obviously, want to thank my family for all of their support. They've supported me since day one. Thank you to Eli, my podcast partner, for everything that he's done for me. And just thank you to all the Colts podcasters who have always been showing me support despite your very busy schedules. Um, but again, thank you to everybody for the support. None of this would be possible without any of you. And for that, I am extremely grateful for all that you have done for me. So before I get into what this podcast is going to be about and what we're going to talk about today, I just wanted to take you guys through my journey as a Colts fan. So I was born and raised as a Colts fan, pretty much. My dad is a Colts fan. He became a fan in the 80s when they were horrible, like after they had just relocated to Indianapolis from Baltimore, and they were terrible. And the people he knew, most of them were like Steelers fans or Cowboys fans, teams that were good back then. And he just decided to root for the Colts because they were pretty much picking first in the draft every year back then. And well, obviously after they drafted Peyton Manning, things started to turn around for them. So I was born in the mid 2000s, right around the time the Colts won their first Super Bowl in Indianapolis. Um, I started watching football around 2015. It was my first full season of watching football. My first game that I watched, though, was the wild card game, the comeback against the Chiefs in 2013 or 2014, I guess. And that was an unbelievable game, second largest comeback in postseason history, to my knowledge. And I just remember jumping up and down with my dad during that game, not even knowing what was going on because I didn't really know football back then. But again, 2015 was the year that I really started to watch it and understand it. I can't believe it's been 8 years now since I've been watching football. It's become such a big part of my life, obviously. And there's no other team I would want to root for. The Colts have given me so many amazing memories. I have some of my favorite memories as a Colt. Obviously, the wild card game was the first one. The 2014 playoffs. I hadn't been watching football yet, but my dad had the game on. We would order food. It was a great time. That was a good playoff run. Had the wild card win over Cincinnati, then went into Mile High and upset the Broncos in the division round. Lost to the Patriots in the deflate game, but at that point I was starting to realize like, wow, like football's a big deal in the household. So obviously the next year was the year that I really started to watch it. Yeah, and pretty much just took it from there. I don't think I missed a game since then. You know, it's always on the TV downstairs. I am the definition of a die-hard football fan. And again, I wanted to tell you that to you guys because a lot of you probably don't know why I'm a Colts fan. I mean, I live in New Jersey. You know, there's not a lot of Colts fans out here, but I'm definitely proud to be representing the Horseshoe out here in New Jersey. A couple of other Colts games that have given me good memories. The first game I went to was a Monday nighter in 2016 at MetLife against the Jets. Final score 41-10. The Colts won. Dwayne Allen had 3 touchdowns. I remember that game. We were like the last people to leave. It was awesome. I remember two fans running onto the field during the game, and it was so funny because when the security tackled them, I'm like, wow, that's the hardest tackle I've seen all night because the Jets were they were completely out of it. The year before they had actually had a good season. That year was not. I remember they had Bryce Petty in at quarterback. It was, oh man, I can't believe it's starting to make me feel old now. But yeah, so a couple of other memories. 2018 season as a whole. That was definitely the most magical season for me as a Colts fan. That 2018 year, the year we started 1-5 and then went on to make the playoffs. It was an unbelievable season. We had gone to the Jets game in week 6 of that year, and I remember there were Jets fans kind of taunting us a little bit as we left the stadium. And what did you know? After that, the Colts won 9 of their final 10 to make the playoffs, and the Jets I think won one game after that for the rest of the season. So it really is it's just the definition of karma. I don't really have anything against Jets fans, to be honest, but just a just an experience I'll never forget. Also the Sunday nighter against Kansas City the year after, Jacoby Brissett was starting that game. We had just lost at home to the Raiders a few weeks ago, or the week before, I should say, and that was pretty devastating. I'm not even gonna lie. But so again, nobody was expecting us to go into Kansas City and beat the undefeated Chiefs on Sunday night, but we just ran the ball down their throats. Marlon Mack had over 100 yards. Our defense played out of their minds. I think we had 4 sacks on Mahomes, and we won that game. Now, that season didn't really go well, but that was, I think, one of the biggest upsets in the NFL that year. Another great game, the COVID year, the game against Green Bay. That was a great game as well. Just a great football game in general. Not even for me as a Colts fan. I think any NFL fan could go back to the game and just say, "Wow, that's a great football game." To be honest, I don't know what it is with the Colts and Aaron Rodgers, but we seem to have A-Rod's number. Packers blew a 14-point lead. Julian Blackmon had a big forced fumble in that game. The refs were awful in that game. We got called for so many holding penalties at the end, and there was a pass interference as well. But we won the game in overtime, and that was our second playoff berth in 3 years. And then the last game that really I'll remember is that game against the Chiefs this year. Again, nobody thought we were going to beat them. We were 0-1-1. We had just lost 24-0 to Jacksonville the previous week. Matt Ryan was looking awful. We had some injuries, and the defense and special teams came out to play. And it's crazy that after beating the best team in the NFL, Frank Reich got fired 6 weeks later. It's just how the NFL works sometimes. So those are some of my favorite memories as a Colts fan. Just wanted to kind of tell you guys my story as a Colts fan, because again, I'm not from Indiana, so I'm not I wasn't born. It's not like a local thing. I was just raised one, and I'm very happy to be a Colts fan. I couldn't be happier. So I just wanted to talk about real quick what this podcast is really going to be about. So the Horseshoe Show is going to air every Wednesday at 7 Eastern. And basically, it's just going to cover the Colts. That's pretty much it. So the 12th Horseshoe with Eli, that's a league-wide coverage. But this is just going to cover the Colts. So during the season, we'll talk about the game before and the game coming up. Now, during training camp, we'll talk about what goes on during camp, which we'll get to a little later. During the offseason, I'll have lots of draft coverage for you guys for the Colts. And whatever else I can find. But I'm really excited to start this. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, to everyone who tunes in, thank you. To each and every one of you, I really, really do appreciate the support. So before we talk about training camp, let's just go through a recap of the Colts offseason. So last year was a disaster of a year. Every Colts fan, every fan of the NFL knows that. There's several videos on social media about lowlights that we had last year. It's pretty fitting. We did not have many fun moments last year. That Kansas City game and maybe the Jacksonville game in week 6, those were our 2 best moments of the year. Other than that, we had a failure of a season. That game against the Vikings late in the season, getting swept again by Tennessee. I could go on and on. There's so many bad losses we had in there. 4 games where we didn't even score a touchdown, and then 4 other games where we scored only 1 touchdown. Obviously, Frank Reich was fired. It was just a dumpster fire for season. Matt Ryan looked horrible. So going into this offseason, we knew the Colts needed a head coach. Chris Ballard had come out and said that this was going to be an extensive coaching search, very thorough indeed. And we ended up with Shane Steichen, which I thought was a really, really good hire. Obviously offensive mind, very smart guy. Saw what he did with Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert. Of course, they both just got paid. Herbert yesterday, $262.5, highest in NFL history. But I'm really excited to see what Shane Steichen can do here in Indianapolis. especially with a guy like Anthony Richardson, who's a project quarterback. And I think that's why the Colts were comfortable with drafting AR because they've seen that Shane Steichen can make it work with any quarterback. So why not the guy with the highest upside and with all the tools that you need? Um, so I'm really excited to see what AR can do. He was the quarterback I wanted in the draft class. Wasn't really that big of a Will Levis guy, but I just can't wait to see what AR could do this year. Whether he starts at week 1 or whether it's like week 9 or whatever. But I think Shane Steichen was a home run of a hire. Just love his mentality. Very smart guy. So I think Shane Steichen is going to do a lot of great things here in Indianapolis. So another, obviously the draft, that took a lot out of us as well. That was another thing, like, which quarterback are we going to take? Is it going to be Anthony Richardson? Is it going to be CJ Stroud? Is it going to be Will Levis? Having the 4th pick, Chris Ballard did not trade up the entire draft process. That was something talked about, but Ballard stuck to it. He was pretty vocal about not wanting to trade up, just sitting back, and I think it would end up working out pretty good for us because I think the Colts got what was probably their number 1 on their board at number 4, and the rest of the Colts draft wasn't too shabby either. Got some really good corners, got a good wide receiver, some good depth on the defensive line and the offensive line. So I think this is Chris Ballard's last chance in Indianapolis. Like, if Anthony Richardson doesn't pan out, then that's got to be it for him. I mean, the Colts have 0 division titles under Chris Ballard. They only have 2 playoff appearances and only 1 playoff win back in 2018. Now, the Andrew Luck retirement, that wasn't really his fault. But at the end of the day, it's been almost 4 years since then. So at that point, you can't even use that as an excuse. You have to move on. You've had 4 years to build this team. And to me, he just hasn't done that great of a job at it. So Ballard really needs to, and Richardson better pan out here because if not, there's going to be drastic changes for the Colts. So that kind of just leads us up to where we are now, which is training camp. This training camp for the Colts has got to be maybe the most intriguing camp in Colts history because when Andrew Luck was a rookie, we pretty much knew we were getting out of him. He was that good of a prospect. Peyton Manning, there wasn't really as much camp coverage back then, but now here in 2023, this camp is going to tell us a lot about what the Colts are going to look like this year. So today ended up being the first practice for the Colts. And it was kind of, well, actually before that, let's just get through. So before the players reported yesterday, the Colts finished up signing their rookies. Anthony Richardson got a 4-year deal worth $33.99 million guaranteed, got a $21.72 million bonus, which got paid up front first. Number 4 overall pick to have that happen. So good for you, Anthony Richardson. Juju Brents, Blake Freeland also got signed on Monday. All the rookies are signed. The players reported yesterday, including Jonathan Taylor. We know about what's been going on with the running backs. They've been very vocal about how frustrated they are. But I'm definitely glad, though, that we saw JT report. I'm going to get to that, though, in a little bit, because that is one of the biggest storylines of training camp is the Taylor situation. So I have 6 main storylines going into training camp that I'm going to read off to you guys. Number 1, it's the quarterback competition. That is a bigger storyline than the other 5 combined, except for maybe the contracts. But sorry about that. Yeah, so it's going to be, so today, first day of camp, it was an hour practice, little laid back. Not really much happening today. They stuck to the red zone. They didn't want to stretch the field. Shane Steichen said that they didn't, because most camp injuries take place in the first week. So they kind of just want to scale it back and get settled as they go further into camp. Gardner Minshew had all the first team reps today in practice. Did pretty well, went 4 or 5 and 11 on 11. But again, it was more of a run. It was more of a run based practice today. So we didn't really see much from the quarterbacks in terms of that. But the quarterback competition, this is going to be a thing that's going to headline all of training camp, not just for the Colts, but the NFL. Is Gardner Minshew or Anthony Richardson going to start week 1? Right now, I personally, I think Gardner Minshew has a really good chance to be the week 1 starter. Now, not everyone's going to agree with me. but his knowledge with Shane Steichen, he worked with him for 2 years there in Philly, and just his experience as a quarterback, he's been one of the best backups. He can step in when you need to. He played well last year for the Eagles in the games that they needed him. And he's going to be a guy who's not really going to turn the ball over that much. They're going to be more of a game. He's going to be more of a game manager he's going to rely on Jonathan Taylor to carry the offense. But again, to allow AR to sit behind you, I think that's a good thing for the Colts. I've heard a lot of people say that you don't learn from the sidelines. You do learn from the sidelines. Look at what happened with Patrick Mahomes. Sat his entire rookie year, learned behind Alex Smith with Kansas City, and look what happened his first full year as a starter. Won the MVP, most passing yards in the league, led the Chiefs almost to the Super Bowl, and it would have been if there wasn't if D4 didn't line up offsides in the championship game. But yes, you do learn from the sideline. As great as AR is, as great as his traits are, he is a project quarterback. He has a lot of stuff to work on, and it's not just footwork. A lot of people think that it's just footwork, and it's not. He needs to work on his accuracy, needs to work on some fundamentals of the game. AR definitely has a long way to go before he's a capable NFL starter. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. AR is great, and I think he's going to be a really good quarterback one day. But you can't just expect him to come in day one and dominate. I mean, today wasn't really able to tell, but throughout camp, it's pretty obvious. There's going to be days where AR looks great. He's going to go out there and look like the franchise guy in Indy, but there's also going to be days where he looks absolutely horrible. And I'm not saying this in a bad way either. It's part of being a rookie. It's part of growing the game. But, he's not going to come out here and just sling it like maybe some people expected to. So I think we need to keep our expectations reasonable for training camp. Obviously, the preseason is going to tell a lot about if AR is ready to start week 1 or not. I would expect an announcement from the Colts about when the week 1 starter would be. I think, to be honest, they're going to wait till after the 3 preseason games. I think they might wait till like a week or 2 before the season to announce. I don't think they're going to announce it by like next week. They're going to take their time and evaluate. Now, again, the Colts don't really have a lot of expectations this year, so starting AR week 1 wouldn't be the worst thing. But again, for a kid who's 21 years old and has all the traits, learning behind a guy like Minshew would be very helpful for him, and maybe ease some of the nerves off of him rather than just going out there week 1 against Jacksonville and, in front of a rocking Lucas Oil Stadium crowd and being expected to win the Colts' first week 1 game since 2013. Yes, that's a correct fact. I can't believe it. But yeah, I'm excited to see what AR can do in camp. And I like Gardner Minshew. So honestly, whoever starts, I'm okay with. I just think the smarter choice would be for Minshew to start. I just think it makes more sense. It'll have AR learn for a little bit. But I think AR could come in at any point after that I'd be okay with. I think somewhere between like week 5 and week 10. So sometime between week 5 against Tennessee and the game where they go to Germany. That would be a good time for the Colts to start AR. I would have thought maybe after a bye week they would have started him, but our bye week is so late this year. Our bye week is in week 11. That seems a little too late. I think AR is definitely going to be starting by then. But so yeah, I think AR is he's gonna shine. He's gonna have some great moments in camp. We just can't expect him to be that guy right away. But again, it's gonna be a great camp, and that's definitely the biggest storyline to follow for Colts camp this year. The next biggest storyline, and this is another pretty big one, it's the contract extensions. Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr. Will these get done? I mean, we don't really know. We don't really have much inside news information right now. What's been going on? Of course, Chris Ballard spoke to the media yesterday. Didn't really say much about their situations. Jonathan Taylor we obviously know that he's frustrated about the running back market. He was part of that Zoom call last week with the running backs. It had initially been reported yesterday by Ian Rappaport that he had not reported to camp. It turned out to not be true, though, because he showed up to camp like 10 minutes later. I think, but Taylor is on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. He's not going to start camp playing. Shane Steichen said today that when he's ready, they'll have him out there. I'm not going to speculate on this if it's contract related or not. Somebody else can do that. But at the same time, the Colts have to decide whether they want to pay JT or whether they want him to just go out there this year. I'm not a big fan of paying running backs. We've seen how bad it's been in the past with guys like Devontae Freeman, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, David Johnson, there's countless running backs that have not succeeded in the NFL. At the same time, though, Jonathan Taylor is going into his 24-year-old season. Even for running backs, that's still pretty young. And I know he had the ankle issue last year, but in the 11 games he did play, he rushed for over 800 yards. If he would have had a full season, he would have rushed for over 1,000 yards for sure. And also, the offensive line was a lot worse last year, so his numbers were obviously going to go down. But I think the Colts have got to figure something out. I'm not sure where the numbers are going to be. I think I wouldn't go any higher for Taylor than like 14 million a year. I think that's like the max. I prefer something around like 13 and a half or 13 million a year. Maybe like a 3 or 4 years with 13 million a year. I think that's the exact point that I would like to see. I doubt Taylor's going to sign for that because I'm sure he wants to break the market, reset the market for a running back. At the same time, though, the last big running back to sign an extension was Nick Chubb, and that was almost 2 years ago now, which is absolutely crazy to me. But, Taylor, I mean, this guy carried the Colts to 9 wins 2 years ago. That year they were 9-1 in games where he rushed for over 100 yards and 0-7 in games that he didn't. So you can see how important this guy is to the Colts offense. I know people are going to say running backs are the most easy position to replace in the NFL, and I don't disagree with you guys on that, but I think Taylor is different than the average running back. I mean, this guy's he's got speed, he's got power, he's got great visibility, he's very smart. Yes, he's not the best pass catcher. Yes, he's not the best pass blocker, but as a pure rusher, just handing off the football to Jonathan Taylor nearly got us to the playoffs 2 years ago. So I am a fan of paying Jonathan Taylor, but not something ridiculous. Like not like 15 million a year or something like that. Something like 13 or 13.5 million a year is like exactly where I want. But I'm going to bring Michael Pittman into this first. I am an advocate for paying Pittman first before paying Jonathan Taylor. And here's why. We obviously know that receivers have no problems getting paid. Just you look at all the contracts that have been given out. But here's the thing, though. Right now, Michael Pittman Jr.'s average annual value right now is probably somewhere between like $17 to $19 million a year. But if Pittman goes out there and has like 80 catches, 1,300 yards, and like 8 touchdowns, his value is going to probably go up to like $22 to $24 million a year. So pay him now. Get your number one locked. Excuse me. Get your number one locked up. And, have AR feel comfortable knowing that he has his number one for his entire rookie contract. That's another reason, too, why you should pay these two guys is because when you have a rookie quarterback like AR, the way he's going to succeed is by having good weapons, a good running game, a good passing game. Michael Pittman's a very complete receiver, very good on the sidelines, good third down option, middle of the field guy. He can go up and get balls, too. We've seen that before. I mean, he has some really good highlights, some really good tape showing Michael Pittman's potential. He just really hasn't had the quarterback to unlock that potential yet because he's had Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, and Sam Ehlinger. That's not the quarterbacks I would want to be throwing the ball to me. No offense to them. But that's why you should pay Pittman, though, because if he has a breakout year, which I think is possible, he fits AR scheme perfectly. The fact that AR can throw the ball more than 15 yards alone is going to benefit Pittman and Alec Pierce as well. That's why you should pay Pittman, though, before his value goes up. I think at least one of these deals will get done before the season starts. I feel pretty confident actually in saying both will get done. But again, obviously that's not a certainty, especially knowing the running back market. But again, we'll just have to let things play out. Chris Ballard said himself, the market is what the market is. So we'll just have to see what transpires throughout these next few weeks. Another big storyline for training camp, the cornerbacks. Chris Ballard came out himself and said yesterday that he wants the Colts to go young at corner, and he's felt this way since late last season. You can definitely tell. The most experienced corner on this Colts team is now Kenny Moore, and the second most experienced is Dallas Flowers. Dallas Flowers was the second least experienced corner last year, so you could tell how drastically different the secondary is. Obviously, Stephon Gilmore is gone. He was traded to Dallas in the offseason. And, of course, Isaiah Rodgers suspended for the season, got released by the Colts for the gambling investigation there. So again, it's very likely you're gonna have two rookie corners starting on the outside. You have Juju Brents, who they drafted in the second round. I really like him. Long, athletic, fits Gus Bradley's scheme really well. But I wouldn't be surprised if he starts off slow because we have not seen him in practice yet. He missed all of OTAs and minicamp because of a wrist surgery that he had in the spring, and he was supposed to be ready for training camp, but he's on the PUP list because of a hamstring issue. Shane Steichen, though, said that he'll be back very soon, so I can't wait for him to come back and to see what he looks like against like Pittman and Pierce and Josh Downs, who I'm really excited about as well. And also Darius Rush, a 5th-round pick, when a lot of people really like that pick. I like that pick. I thought for sure he'd go in like the 3rd round or something. So that means you could have two rookies starting on the outside, and that's obviously concerning because rookie corners often struggle at the beginning of their careers. I don't think there's going to be weeks, I feel like, where our secondary gets lit up, especially against Cincinnati and Baltimore and even Jacksonville. Our secondary is really going to struggle. I think it's a little concerning that the most experienced guy on this team is a slot corner. That is really concerning to me. You two rookies on the outside. I mean, I'm excited to see how they play, but it's going to be interesting. Got my man Drake in here. Darius Rush was a steal. Yes, he sure was. Supposed to be probably a 3rd-round pick, a 5th-round pick. By the way, guys, go support Drake over at Horseshoe Huddle Podcast. Absolutely amazing content creator. Called him the busiest man in the Colts media. Absolutely fantastic content throughout training camp. So for all of you Colts fans watching this guy, make sure you follow because if you don't, you're missing out. But yes, Darius Rush for sure was a steal there. Also, there's a couple of other corners on this team that could be competing. Guys like Tony Brown, possibly. And there's been a lot of rumors this offseason about the Colts going for a veteran cornerback. I am very surprised that they have not. I mentioned earlier that Chris Ballard wanted to go young at cornerback. He said that himself. But I think at least bringing in a veteran to help mentor the young guys. And they don't really have that. Guys like Casey Hayward are still out there. Marcus Peters was out there for a while before signing with the Raiders. Shaquille Griffin was a guy I liked the Colts to sign before he went to the Texans. This secondary is really going to struggle early in the season, and it's probably going to be what holds the Colts back because the Colts front seven is really, really good. One of the better ones in the league, but we just got to hope to see this secondary grow as the season goes on, and we'll see how they do in training camp. Another thing that I found interesting about training camp is Shane Steichen's schedule of camp. This is quite a bit different than Frank Reich's last year. So the Colts had 13 practices at Grand Park, their training camp facility, including two joint practices with the Chicago Bears on the 16th and the 17th of August. They'll also go to Philly for a joint practice there with the Eagles on the 22nd of August. And what's interesting about this is that 9 of the 13 practices are early in the morning. So from 9 to 10 or 10 to 11. So getting that practice in early, I think it's an interesting strategy. Last year, mostly in camp, the Colts had practices that went from 1 to 2. So interesting, a change up there from Steichen. The Colts also have 3 night practices in there. Actually, it might be 4. I'm not sure. And then they have also one in the mid-afternoon. But it's definitely an interesting schedule to have, some do that early in the morning. But that seems like something Shane Steichen would do. He's a smart guy. I trust pretty much anything he does. So yeah. He said that so the practice times are also a little different. So today's practice was an hour. The next practice, which is on Friday, is going to be an hour and 15. And then they have another one Saturday night, which is going to be an hour and a half. The two with the Bears are 2 hours. So I just think it's an interesting schedule, and we'll see how the Colts adjust to it. Another big storyline. This one got a lot of attention today. And here, let me actually show you. Because the player right here, Shaq Leonard. So obviously, when he's on the field, he is one of the best linebackers in the league. Turnover machine for sure. great at punching the ball out. That's one of my favorite things about him. And I think what makes him one of the most fun players in the league. But he's had so many issues as of late. He's had 2 back surgeries because of nerve issues. He started the last 2 years on the PUP list to start camp. So I think it's really, really encouraging that he's starting this year not on the PUP. And to my surprise, probably everyone's surprise in the Colts media, Shaq had a lot of action today in the first day of camp. He participated in individual drills, 7-on-7 and 11-on-11. Participated in about 40% of the 11-on-11 plays, to my knowledge. And again, I think he's still a little bit away. He's still got to ramp up a little bit. But the fact that he did this much on his first day of camp, when we thought there was a decent chance he'd be on PUP, that is really encouraging. And after watching him speak to the media earlier today, and just like his energy, you could tell that he's probably in the best position he's been in I'd probably say 2 years. So I'm really happy for Shaq. I cannot wait to see him back on the field this year. I wouldn't expect him to see any time really in the preseason. I wouldn't expect to see Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman in the preseason either, and probably some other like DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart. I wouldn't expect to see them play in the preseason. But again, just really, really happy to see Shaq out there practicing. That's a big step for the Colts because this front seven is already really, really good without Shaq Leonard. And with Shaq Leonard, it could be a top 5 in the league, and I'm not even exaggerating it. So really excited to see what Shaq can do. And Andrew and Drake kind of made me a little nervous last time on their show by saying they think there's a chance he starts on PUP. Well, fortunately, he is not, and I'm really happy about it. The last storyline I'm going to talk about is who I think is going to shine in training camp and who do I think is going to disappoint. So as for shining in training camp, there are several players I like. One of them is Jelani Woods. I have always been a big fan of Jelani Woods. When he got drafted by the Colts, and I saw like, oh wow, 6'7", like he's gonna be this like ultimate red zone weapon. He's ridiculously athletic. Saw some moments of it last year at a 2-touchdown game against the Chiefs. Great game on Monday night against Pittsburgh. I think he's going to be a real star in camp this year. I think he's got to be the favorite to start a tight end going into camp. And I really do think that J-Dub is going to show a lot. He's going to, I think, be catching a lot of touchdowns during camp. I think he's going to have a big impact in the preseason if he plays, which I think he will. This is a very crowded tight end room. This honestly could probably have a whole podcast on its own about how good this Colts tight end room is. You've got Mo Alley Cox, who's obviously been here for the longest. Run blocking tight end. Can make some plays with the ball in his hands. Kylan Granson, a really fast and athletic tight end that the Colts have used sparingly. Drew Ogletree had a really good camp last year before tearing his ACL. He's back out there, though, which is another good thing. Because I think with a full camp, with the way he played last year, he has a chance to be a big piece in this Colts offense. And also the rookie Will Mallory out of Miami. He's also on the PUP list with a foot injury. But when he comes back, I think he has the chance to be, pretty good in camp. Another guy I think is going to shine, Alec Pierce. I say this with Jelani Woods, but even before Alec Pierce got drafted, I have always been a big fan of this kid. He is one of the best receivers in the league when it comes to one-on-one matchups. And I'm not even exaggerating that. We saw last year some of the plays he made. You leave Alec Pierce one-on-one in press coverage, don't. He's going to beat you. He's really athletic, 6'3", pretty good hands too. I remember that drop he had in week 1. After that though, I can't remember any drops he had the rest of the season. He was just really secure, had some great games against Denver, Jacksonville, couple other really good games that year or his rookie year. And with AR is the perfect fit for Alec Pierce. I said this with Michael Pittman, but I really mean this for Alec Pierce. AR already has one of the best deep balls in the league as a rookie, and we just know that because what we saw at Florida. But just because of the fact that Pierce is a guy who gets vertical, and that's AR's cup of tea, Pierce might have some games where he has like 3 catches for like 90 yards. I'm not even exaggerating that. And I think in camp he's going to show a lot. Made a couple of nice plays today. Had a nice catch during individual drills in the end zone. Perfectly placed ball by AR. Had a catch in 11-on-11 with Gardner Minshew. So I think Alec Pierce is going to have a really big training camp. Another guy who I think is going to shine, I'm going to go with Samson Ebukam, somebody we signed this offseason, 3 years, $27 million from the 49ers. Kind of used as a rotational piece there. But for rotational piece to have 5 sacks, if he's going to be a starting edge rusher for us, think about what he can do. Again, seems like a great fit for Gus Bradley's defense. He's just a better version of Yannick Ngakoue. Good run defender, good pass rusher, kind of like a push the pocket guy. And I think he's going to have a really good camp, and he's going to be a really good fit for the Colts. For you Colts fans out there who, when they signed him, you didn't know who he was, you're going to know who he is after this year. He's going to have a really, really good season. Now, for disappointment, you guys are going to come at me for this. I know it, but this is literally for one reason. And I'm going to say Anthony Richardson, just because the expectations are way too high. Everyone is expecting AR to just come out. I tried to talk about this before, but just absolutely sling it. And that's not going to happen. He's going to have some days where he looks absolutely awful. And I'm not saying this in a bad way. It's a part of growing, but he's not going to be perfect. Like maybe some people think he is. Like he's not this Cam Newton. He's not going to be Cam Newton or Lamar Jackson, the first few days of camp. It's going to take some time for him to grow. But once AR can become a capable NFL quarterback, oh man, it's going to be a fun time in Indianapolis. They have a bright future if AR turns out the way he does. So that is pretty much it for what I'm going to cover today. I'll go through a couple quick stats for Colts camp today. Gardner Minshew took all 15 of the first team reps in 11 on 11, 3 different 5-play sessions, 5 of 6 in completions, had what complete passes to Evan Hull, Kylan Granson, Alec Pierce, Zach Moss, and Isaiah McKenzie. AR and his 11 on 11 work went 2 for 2 with a touchdown pass to Ethan Fournier, who's one of our backup receivers, also rushed in a score as well. Kenny Moore made a really nice play in 7 on 7, breaking up a pass to Michael Pittman in the end zone. And again, Shaq Leonard was out there. Drew Ogletree looked pretty good off the torn ACL. The Colts, who did not practice today, Juju Brents dealing with a hamstring injury, and Julian Blackmon also dealing with a hamstring injury. No real timetables on them yet, although Shane Steichen did say that Brent should be back soon, and I would expect Blackmon to be back soon as well. And then Jonathan Taylor, Will Mallory, and Tyquan Lewis all remain on the physically unable to perform list. Jonathan Taylor has the ankle, Will Mallory with a foot earlier this spring, and Tyquan Lewis still recovering from that torn patellar tendon he had last October. So before I sign off here, and once again, thank you to everyone who's watching. I really appreciate all of you. I want to take some time to give back to you guys since you guys have done so much for me. So on Search Sports TV, the show you're watching this on, make sure you go support Eli and I at the 12th Horseshoe podcast. Episodes, usually 1 episode a week, and then once the season comes, 2 episodes a week for a recap and a preview of every week. Also go support Sports Mono and Mono, a show that Eli does with Jim. So make sure you go support Eli over there. He's doing a great job over there. And then for all my Colts guys, go follow Drake and Andrew over at the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. Derek and Cody over at the Bring the Juice podcast. Shad McGinnis over at the Saddle Up podcast. One of my favorites. He's a great content creator. One of my favorites. And go support my guy Destin Adams at A to Z Sports. Just got that position. Nobody deserves it more. Such a hardworking guy. Really proud of Destin. And again, just thank you to everyone who has supported me. And real quick, I'm going to bring this back in the video, but yeah, so this autographed Shaquille Leonard jersey, let's see if I could, yep, there it is right there. This was sent to me by Matthew Maxwell, so thank you very much for that, at _Maddie_Ice12. So thank you again for that jersey, very much appreciated. And once again, thank you to everyone for tuning in to the first edition of the Horseshoe Show. I will see you guys all next Wednesday for the next episode. Should be a fun one. Next Colts practice this Friday, 10 a.m. They're back Saturday night, 6 to 7:30. First Colts preseason game, the 12th of August against Buffalo. I will see you guys all then. Thank you guys for watching. Jack Rizzo signing off.